Okay, so we're going to do section 6.2 quiz review. It's a pretty short quiz review. It's a pretty short quiz, I think, in general. But it really comes down to, did you memorize the point-slope equation, the point-slope formula, if you will? Now, if you haven't memorized it, you're going to need to. So that's the number one thing you need to study. So the point-slope formula, I'll write it at the top of the page here, is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. Now I'm going to highlight, let's use blue, blue's nice. Highlight what we're going to plug in. We're going to plug in y1, we're going to be plugging in m, and we're going to be plugging in x1. These are the three numbers that we plug in. Now for numbers 1 and 2, this is very simple. This is very easy. We just have to put the numbers in the places, okay? In those positions. So you'll notice on number 1, we have a point, 5, 8, which 5 is an x value, 8 is a y value. You can note this is x1 and y1 because this is the x1 and y1 that will be going in the equation, right? In the formula. Okay. Then we have our slope. Our slope is negative 6. That is our m value, right? Slope is m, so that's our m value. So if I take all this information and just simply put them in the correct place, which is why, obviously, if you don't know what this formula is, if you don't remember this form, that equation, then you're going to struggle. But you're going to have to memorize this equation. So let me rewrite the equation and just replace things. So y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1, right? That's the general equation. y1 is our y value, which is 8. So it's y minus 8. x1 is our x value, and that is 5. So it's x minus 5. And then m is our slope, which in this case is negative 6. And bada bing, bada boom, right? You've got your point slope equation. Number 2 is the exact same thing. So you have your x value, which we're going to consider x1. We have our y value, which we'll consider the y1. And we have the slope, which we have as m. Same idea. Here's my general equation. Y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. Memorize this formula. Again, you kind of have to, right? So we have all the information. We just have to plug it in. We have a point. We have a slope. We can plug that information in. So our y1 is this 3 from our point. So y minus 3. Our x1 is that negative 2. But keep in mind, it's a negative 2. And then our slope is 1/6. So 1/6. So this is our equation. However, you do need to simplify this on the test. You'll notice here I have a x minus negative 2 because I had the minus sign. I plugged in my negative 2, and now there's a double negative going on. What you should really do is change this to x plus 2. And we talked about this a long time ago. We said the way it appears in the equation is opposite from the way it appears in the original point. Because in this equation, it looks like a negative 3. However, of course, in the equation, or in the point, it was a positive 3. And here it looks like a positive 2, but of course in the equation, in the point, it was a negative 2, right? So remember the opposite effect here. A plus 2 is indicating that this is a negative 2, and a minus 3 is indicating it is a positive 3. So minus means a positive number in this case, and a positive or plus means a negative number in this case. So just remember that. And you'll notice here, right, for my 5 and my 8, both 5 and 8 were positive to start, but of course, when I plug them in, it looks like a minus 5 and it looks like a minus 8. So that opposite thing does take effect because, remember, the original equation has these two minus signs in it. That's the reason why. They come with minus signs rather than plus signs. So that's the reason why it appears to be opposite for us. So number 3. Number 3 is a very crucial one. 3 and 4 are very crucial ones. You have to understand, of course, the slope formula as well as the point slope formula. Now our slope formula, and I'm going to write this down, slope formula is this, okay? Y minus y over x minus x. So it's simply just a fraction where the top part of the fraction, the numerator, is just taking the y values, subtracting them, and the denominator, the bottom of the fraction, is x minus x. Just taking the x values and subtracting them. So let's label our points because our points have two x values and two y values, right? So xy, and xy. Remember, x is always first, y is always second. It's always alphabetical. Every ordered pair you ever see is always going to be written as xy, x being the first number, y being the second. So that's how you can identify which one is which. All right, so you're doing y minus y. Now our y values are -9 and -2, so we're going to subtract them. Now, I always take the last one and subtract it from the first one. So -9 minus -2. So that's going to look like this. -9 minus -2. Yes, you are taking negative numbers and you're subtracting them. Remember, the formula here has this minus sign in it, as you subtracting it. So if you're subtracting a negative, it's going to be like this. It's going to be kind of that double negative thing there. Now our x values are on the bottom. Our x values, we have -1 and 6. And again, I always go with the second one minus the first one. So -1 minus 6. So I'm going to write this. -1 minus 6. Now it's a positive 6, so I don't need a parentheses like it did with the -2 in, above it. You know, -1 minus 6 is perfect enough. So be mindful of that. If you're subtracting a negative, you do sort of get a double negative. But if you're subtracting a regular number, then you're just going to be subtracting a regular number. So now it's just a matter of, can you reduce this? Can you simplify this? Can you do that arithmetic? Now, a double negative essentially means like a plus. So think of this as like a -9 plus 2. -9 plus 2 would be -7. And then on the bottom, -1 minus 6. If I take 1 away and then I take 6 more away, then it's kind of like adding up in a weird way. We've taken 7 away, so that's -7. Now we have our fraction. We've simplified our slope down to -7 over -7, which, if we simplify this, is just 1. -7 divided by a -7 would just be simply 1. So our slope is 1. Now, that's crucial. I'm going to circle this. Because remember, our answer in point slope form is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. Okay? There are two ways to write the answer because there are two different points we can use. So we know that the slope is 1. So of course we're going to write 1 here for the slope. We also know that an x and y value. Now we have 2 points, so we can use either one of these points to plug in. So let's say if you want to use the first point, then your answer would look like this. Y minus a -2, and then x minus 6. So that's the -2 for the y value here, and then the 6 for the x value here. Now, again, because it's minus a negative, this changes to a plus. We talked about that before. If it's a negative number here, it's going to look like a plus number here. If it's a positive number here, then it's going to look like a minus number here. So just remember that. So that's one answer. Another answer is if you use the other point. So you could have written, obviously, you don't have to write both. Either one that you write down would be fine. But I'm just going to show you that there are technically 2 possible ways to write your answer here because you have 2 possible points. So I'll use the -1 as the x, -9 as the y. So if I use -9 as the y, it's going to look like +9. If I use the -1 as the x, it's going to look like +1. And then, of course, remember the slope was still 1, so that one was still going to be there. So there are 2 possible ways to write the answer. Just depends. This top point or this top answer is using the 6, -2 point, and the bottom answer here is using the -1, -9 point. So either one is correct. You only need one of them, but they're both good answers, okay? The top one or the bottom one. All right, number 4. Number 4 is the same thing. So I'll do less teachy and just worky, okay? So same formula, it's y is on top. Remember, y is going on top. Y minus y over x minus x. So if it helps to label them, let's label them. So our y values, we have 10 and we have 4, so we're going to subtract them. And again, my suggestion is always take the second one and minus the first, okay? 10 minus 4. All right, and now also we have to do the x values. So our x values are 2 and -1. Again, I always take the second one and subtract the first one. So 2 minus a -1. Keep in mind, subtracting a negative goes like this. So when you simplify, 10 minus 4 is going to be 6. And 2 minus -1, remember, a minus a negative is kind of like a plus. So 2 plus 1, which is 3. 6 divided by 3 simplifies to 2, making this my slope. This is m. So again, there are two possible answers. It depends on which point you use. So if you use -1 and 4 as your point, then your equation will look like this. Let me write the general form first, and then I'll just change my values. So the y value would be 4 because of this y value. My m is, of course, 2 because I just got that over there. And then my x value is -1. So because it's negative, it'll look like a +1 for the x. So remember, the x value goes next to the x number, or the x letter, and the y value goes next to the y. Okay, so that's your answer if you use that point -1, 4. The other answer you could have is if you use the other point. So 10 for the y and 2 for the x. So it would look like y minus 10, because that's, again, 10 for the y equals 2. Remember, that 2 is the same as the slope over here that we calculated a second ago. And then x minus 2. Okay, so this is the y and the x value from the point up here. Remember, these are both positive, so when I write them down, you're going to see the minus sign. So -2 for x and a -10 for y. Because remember, it's kind of opposite from the way you would see it originally. So there are two possible ways you could write your answer. Either one of these is fine. Obviously, the second one is if you used the point 210. Okay, two possible answers. Depends just on which point you use to plug in. And then number 5 and number 6. So here's what you should do in number 5 and number 6. You should write down the point and the slope from the equation. You have the equation in point slope form. Let's write down our point and slope. So the point that we see here is we have this for the x value, because we know x is next to the x. So this is the x, but it's a positive, which means it's really a -5. Keep that in mind. Our y value is the number next to y. Now it's a -4, which really means it's a +4. So our point is a -5 and +4. Our slope is this fraction here, 4/5. So now let's plot our point and let's use our slope and draw our graph. So we're going to first start at our point. So we're going to start at -5, 4, which is, we zoom in, -5 for x, and then +4 for y is right here. So that's the point, -5, 4. That is my starting point right here. And then I'm using the slope of 4/5. Now, slope is rise over run, just like before. So we're going to go rising, which is up 4, and running, which is +5, is right 5. So we're going to count up 4 spaces. So let's zoom in here. We'll count up 4. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then right 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That puts our point right there. And then we can do it again. Go up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and right 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put you right here. And if you want to go backwards, then go backwards. Go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and then left 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That puts us here. And that's our line. Okay, so we started at this point here because that was the point that was in our equation from point slope form. Not the y-intercept. It didn't tell us the y-intercept. But that's the point from our equation. And then we just went from that point, we followed our slope. So it's kind of like slope-intercept form, but you're just starting at a unique point based on what point was given in the equation. And then the last one, let's write down the point and slope that we see. So point, slope. So the point here is from the x and the y. So the x is next to the x. So that's this -7. But because it's a minus, means this x is really a +7. And then our y value is next to the y, which is a +3 here. But of course, that means it's really a -3. So remember to kind of do the opposite sign on this one. Our slope is -6, which, if we want to write as -6/1, I would encourage, because it helps to write as a fraction our slope, because our slope is like a rise over run. So if it's -6, same thing as -6/1. This is rising -6, which means down 6, and then running +1, which means right 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at this point that we have here, 7, -3. So we're going to count over to 7, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then down to -3. That's going to be right here. So this is going to be our starting point. Now we're going to use our slope to find the rest of this line. So we're going to go down 6 and then right 1. So we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and right 1. That puts us right here. And if I want to go backwards, then I'll go up 6 and left 1. So go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and left 1. That puts us right here. And do it again, up 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and left 1 puts us right there. And there you have it. There's your line. So remember, we started at this point, and then we used our down 6, right 1 slope to complete the rest of that line. And that's everything. That's the whole shebang right there. So, yeah. That covers it. If you guys have any issues, just let me know. But otherwise, I hope you're ready for the quiz. Okay? See you next time. Bye.